Okay, here we are going to talk about the review for the S5 S10 Arithmetic and Geometric Sequence and Series chapter. Okay, in this example, number one, a company sells ladders and they're made of different lengths. The first rung is 30 centimeters from the base of the ladder. So this distance right here to here is 30. And cm. And then the second run is 57 from the base. So this distance from here to here is 57 cm. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, find the distance from the base of the ladder to the top of the rung. So the very first thing we need to do is I need to find the distance. Uh, so the common difference So the common difference is equal to 57 minus 30, and that's going to give me the distance between one rung and the next. Okay, so the common difference is that difference, so my common difference is equal to 27 centimeters. Okay, so now I need to find to the top of the ladder, and the important thing is the ladder has 11 spaces between the rungs. Okay, so up to the top it's 11, and the space right here between all of these is the same. So we're going to use arithmetic sequence, and so the formula for the arithmetic sequence is this: u subscript 1 equals u1 plus n minus 1 times d. And we know that we've got n is the number of rungs, so we're going to have 11 there. u1 is our first rung, and we know that that's 30. d we just found out is 27. And this is the height of the from the base to the 11th run. And we plug that into our calculator, and we get 30 plus 10 times 27, 30 plus 270, and it's equal to 300 centimeters. And that is the length if we have 11 rungs. Okay, so the maximum number of rungs, find the maximum number of rungs if this is the length of our ladder. So once again, we're going to use this formula here, but now we need to find n, the number of rungs, and we're going to use this formula, and you know that the length of the ladder is this. So I'm going to replace u sub n with 1050. So 1050 equals u sub 1 plus n minus 1 times d. So u sub 1 is 30, and d is 27. All right, and so step one, I'm going to subtract 30 on both sides. So I got 1020 equals n minus 1 times 27. And now I'm going to divide both sides by 27, and I get 37.78. Actually, this shouldn't be equal. This should be greater than or equal. Because this is going to be greater than the number of rungs here. And then I add 1 on both sides, and I get 38.78 is greater than n. So what does that mean? How many rungs on the ladder? We're not going to have a 0.78 of a rung. That doesn't make any sense. So here we're going to say n is going to be equal to 38, and we're going to round down because the rungs can't be closer to each other than 27 centimeters. Okay, you may want to hit pause to copy this down. Okay, let's talk about question number 2. The first term of the arithmetic sequence is u sub 1. The common difference is 2.5. Find the second term and the third term. So my first term is 5, and we know the common difference is 2.5. So I'm going to add 2.5 to 5, and we get 7.5. And then I'm going to add 2.5 to that term, and then we get the third term. Okay, write down the general formula. So when they ask you to write down the general formula, we're using this equation. It's an arithmetic sequence, and but we're going to replace u subscript 1 with 5, and we're going to replace d with 2.5. And that's exactly what we've done right here. Okay. Find the smallest value of n for which u sub n is greater than 375. So once again, I'm going to use this formula. I'm going to replace u sub n with 377. U sub 1 is going to be 5, and my d value is 2.5. So, and we know the smallest value of n, find the smallest value of n for which this value is going to be greater than 375. So our answer needs to be rounded up because this is going to be greater than 377. So we've plugged everything. We're going to subtract 5 on both sides. We get this. We're going to divide both sides by 2.5 to get 148.8 is less than or equal to, or less than n minus 1. Then we add 1 on both sides and we get this. Okay, you may want to hit rewind and listen to that again if you need to hear it some more. Okay. Next. Okay, consider the arithmetic series. Here's the series. Find the number of terms in the series. Okay, so the very first thing I did was I said, okay, well, I need to figure out the difference between here and here. And since it's arithmetic, we know that we're adding 0.4, 0.4. I can do 20.4 minus 20, and I know that my common difference is 0.4. Okay. Then using this formula, I'm going to replace d with 0.4, and so here I'm replacing d with 0.4. We know that u sub 1 is 20, and then this is u sub n. So this is our final term, and our final term is 37.6. So I'm replacing u subscript n with 37.6, and now we can solve for n. So first step is I subtract 20 on both sides. Okay, then I get 37.6 minus 20 gives me 17.6 equals this. So then we divide both sides by 0.4. 17.6 divided by 0.4 gives me 44. And then I add 1 on both sides. I get n is 45. Okay, now I find the sum of the series. So I could use either of these equations. I could use this one here, or I could use this one here. I like to use this one here whenever I can. And this one here, we know the common difference, we know the first term, we know n. This one works more often, but in this example, you're given the very last term. Whenever you're given the very last term, you may as well use this equation here because it's significantly easier. So we've got our first term, our last term, and our number of terms. So we just found out n was 45. So I'm going to replace n with 45. Our first term is 20. Our last term is 37.6. I plug in those values, and then I simplify. Okay, next one. Okay, write down the expression for s sub n. The sum of the first n terms is this. So the very first thing I did is to write. In order to write this expression, I needed to figure out d. So we can do the second term minus the first. So 100 minus 105. I know my common difference is negative 5. It's going down as I go to the next term. The first term, u sub 1, is 105. So now I'm going to use this formula here to find, if I'm asked to find a general expression. In this example, I'm going to have to use this one and not this one because we don't know the last term. Okay, so using this formula, I've got it written down here. We're replacing u sub 1 with 105. We're replacing d with negative 5. And there is our general formula. If you simplify it further, that's fine too. Hence, find the n value for which the sum is equal to 1140. Now this is the one we've spent a lot of time doing in class, and we have to use a calculator. So let's do this together so you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so we've found our general formula. It's right there, right? So here's how I type it into the calculator. You hit y equals, and then I'm going to say x divided by 2 times, okay, 2 times 105 gives me 210, plus parentheses x minus 1, close parentheses, times negative 5, and then close parentheses again. So what I'm doing here is this open parentheses is at 210, and the close parentheses is after the negative 5. You got to be very, very careful with your parentheses, right? Here's the open parentheses, here's the closed parentheses. So be careful with your parentheses. So I've typed it in, and now I can do second graph. Notice here that started at 9. I mean, I could up arrow until I get to 0. Or I can do second window and delta TBL start. If I want to start at 0, I type in 0. If I want to start at 100, I could enter 100. And, oops, that's not what I meant to push. If I do second graph, then I would start here. But we don't want to start at 100. I want to start at 0. So second window, I'm going to change the delta TBL to 0. Okay. Second graph, I'm going to look at my table, and we're trying to find out when is the value of n for the sum going to be 1140. So now I'm going to keep arrowing down until I get to 1140. And there it is, when n is 19. Okay. Next one. Okay, consider the sequence below. There's 3 segments. Find the number of lines in the segment for figure 7. So the first figure has 1, 2, 3 lines. The second figure has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The third figure has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So my sequence is going up 3, 5, 7. So we can see that it's going up by 2, so we know our common difference is 2. Here's our formula for finding a term in an arithmetic sequence. And now we want to find the 7th term. So I'm going to make u of this equation equal to 7. We know the common difference is 2. We know our first term is 3. So now I simplify this, and I find out that the 7th term is going to have 15 lines if I continued this out. Question B. given the figure n contains 251 lines, show that n equals 125. So when you're asked to show, this means you need to do all the steps, and you're told that the answer is 125. Okay, so I'm going to replace u sub n with 251, and then u sub 1 we already know is 3. We're going to show that n is 125, so we're still going to use n here and put in 2 here. So subtract 3 on both sides, divide both sides by 2, add 1 on both sides, and now we have shown that n is 125. Question C. Find the total number of line segments of the first 100 figures. So now they've asked us to find the total. So we're going to use the sum formula. Now, given these two different formulas, I can't use the second formula. I don't know what the 100th term is. Now, I could figure out the 100th term by using this equation and figuring out the 100th term. But you may as well just use this equation, and since you don't know the final term. So using this equation, you can see I've written it here already. We know our first term is 3. We know n is 100. So I'm replacing n with 100, and d we already know is 2. So I've replaced n with 100, u1 with 3, and d with 2. And then we simplify this equation. Okay? Okay. The third term of an arithmetic sequence is -88. The 10th term is -60. So here I've got my third term and I've got my 10th term. So when I look at this, I know it goes up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So each time I'm adding d, plus d, plus d, plus d, plus d, plus d. So I know I'm going to be adding 7d with -88 in order to get my 10th term, which is -60. So we're adding 7 common differences in order to get -60. So and the third term is this. So we add 88 on both sides, divide by 7, and I know the common difference is 4. So if I add 4, add 4, add 4, add 4, add 4, add 4, I know that my next term is going to be -60 if I'm adding 4 all 7 times. Okay, so we found the common difference. Now we need to figure out the first term. So if I'm adding 4 this way, I could subtract 4, subtract 4. So if I subtract 4 twice, then I'm going to say, okay, -8 minus 4 minus 4, which is going to be -8. Now I know my first term is -96. Okay, calculate the number of negative terms in the sequence. So using our formula to get a term, we want to find out how many are negative. All of these are negative, right? But if I keep going, eventually it's going to become positive. So if I replace u1 with 0, we know our first term is -96. We know d is equal to 4 because we keep adding 4. And we simplify this, and then we get n is 25. So I know the first 24 terms are negative. I could do this with a calculator too. So if I clear, I typed in this equation, -96 plus parentheses x minus 1, close parentheses, 4. And I could do second graph to get a table, and I can keep going up. We already know that the answer is 24. And when I get here, you can see, okay, at the 24th term, I've got a negative value. The 25th term is not negative, it's 0. So from here on the calculator, we can see that there's 24 negative terms before I start getting to positive terms. Consider the geometric sequence. New question. Consider the geometric sequence. The first term is 54, the second term is 162. Okay, so to find the common ratio, you can do the second term divided by the first term. This is geometric. Okay, so the formulas for a geometric sequence is this for the sum and this for a term. All right? Okay, find the least value of n such that the nth term of the sequence is greater than 2.2 times 10 to the 9th. Okay, so here's my formula for finding a term in the sequence. Okay, my first term is 54. We know r is 3, and here's the formula. So if I'm going to put this into my calculator, clear, 54 times 3 to the power, parentheses, x minus 1, close parentheses, second graph. Okay, well, and we want to find the first term that's greater than 2.2 times 10 to the 9th. So, okay, this is 10 to the 8th, 10 to the 9th, 2.2 times 10 to the 9th. And as you can see here, I've got 2.3 times 10 to the 9th. So that's going to be when n is 17. Okay, next one. We've got a spinner. Spinning it. Okay, so write down the sum of of all 9 sectors. So we got sector 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9. I guess it's going this way. And so the sum of all these angles is 360. Okay. Now you're told that the 9th sector, that's this one here, right? And our first sector, right here, here's our first sector. They keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller, right? And this is an arithmetic sequence, so we keep subtracting the same amount to get to this one here. So we've got our first sector, which is u sub 1. And our 9th sector is a third the size of the first sector. So I'm replacing u sub n with 1/3 u1. And there's 9 sectors. So that means n is 9. And we know the sum of all these sectors is 360. So now we just need to simplify and solve for n. So what I did was I said, okay, u sub 1 plus a third u sub 1. So I'm going to get a common denominator, 3 over 3 u sub 1 plus 1/3 u sub 1. That's going to add up to give me 4/3 u sub 1. And I could simplify this a little further because we know that 9 over 5 times 4/3, that's going to simplify to 6. And then divide both sides by 6. We're going to get the first term is 60. Okay, now we're playing a game, and the arrow is spun, and if the arrow stops on random sectors. If the arrow stops in sector 1, you're going to win 10 points. Otherwise, you're going to lose 2 points. So if I'm winning, and it will land on sector 1, which is a 60 out of 36, a 360 chance of winning. If you win, you're going to get 10 points. If you lose, okay, so all of this here is going to be 300 out of 60. And then you're going to lose 2 points. Multiply this together. 10 times 60 gives me 600. Negative 2 times 300 is also going to give me negative 600. This minus this is going to give me 0. This means it's a fair game if your expected value is 0. Okay, the rest of this handout I will do on a separate video.